Pardon me. Preston Blackwood's tone slices through the crystal laughter like a blade. I believe there's been some confusion about tonight's attendance. The woman in the sophisticated navy dress holds his stare unflinchingly. Around them, Chicago's power brokers pause their conversations. Smartphone screens illuminate discreetly. Perhaps you might want to verify that assumption. Dr. Jade Beaumont responds calmly, smoothing her understated evening bag. Hardly necessary. Grace Blackwood glides forward, her emerald bracelet catching the light. Some people simply don't understand boundaries. Marcus Blackwood chuckles softly, his phone already recording for social media. Mother, should I call management? Vanessa Blackwood signals the approaching staff, her designer heels clicking against marble. The family creates a crescent formation, their collective superiority unmistakable. Jade glances at her platinum timepiece. Precisely 9:23 p.m. Have you ever held such devastating authority that others completely missed the weapon pointed directly at their foundation? The Heritage Club's penthouse gleams with Midwest wealth. Crystal fixtures scatter rainbow fragments across polished granite floors. Tonight's charity benefit for the Blackwood Foundation attracts Chicago's most influential dynasties. Two security personnel in charcoal suits approach, their communication devices crackling softly. Ma'am, we'll need to examine your invitation, the senior guard states, hand positioned near his radio. Jade reaches into her evening bag with measured composure. Around them, the circle of observers expands. Someone whispers, "This is about to go viral," behind a champagne glass. "Oh, this will be entertaining," Vanessa murmurs loud enough for the growing audience. A woman in designer frames raises her phone higher. Her Instagram Live displays 623 viewers and climbing. The comments flow rapidly. Karen's situation developing and get her queen alongside less supportive messages. Jade presents an ivory card with gold lettering. The guard studies it carefully, his expression shifting. This appears authentic. Appears? Grace's laughter chimes like breaking crystal. Preston, darling, didn't the club upgrade their verification systems? Preston straightens his platinum cufflinks. His voice carries the weight of boardroom decades. Sometimes invitations are duplicated or misappropriated. The accusation lingers heavily. Several guests nod in understanding. Marcus's phone captures every angle. His followers are consuming this content eagerly. 8,000 views in 2 minutes. Pure social media gold, he mutters quietly. I can authenticate the invitation's validity, Jade states calmly. How exactly? Vanessa crosses her arms. Do you possess endorsements from board members who sponsored your presence? The crowd draws closer. This transcends entertainment now. It's a public examination. Dr. Rebecca Miller, a distinguished physician, steps forward. Vanessa, perhaps we should... Dr. Miller, respectfully, Grace interrupts. We maintain protocols for specific reasons. The Foundation's reputation requires upholding certain standards. The coded language resonates clearly. Several guests exchange uncomfortable glances, but nobody intervenes. A server carrying champagne stumbles slightly, bumping Jade's arm. She steadies herself gracefully, but the motion shifts her evening bag. A business card falls to the granite floor. Marcus zooms in with his camera as the guard retrieves it. Beaumont Federal Consulting, he reads aloud, then hesitates. His expression changes subtly. Never heard of it, Vanessa says dismissively. Probably some minor firm attempting to network beyond their level. The live stream comments explode. Someone types, Beaumont Federal Car Major Government Contractor Dummy. But the family remains oblivious to the digital tide turning. Ma'am, if you could step aside, the second guard suggests, we can resolve this privately. Privately? Jade's voice remains level, but something in her tone makes the guard pause. Preston checks his timepiece. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an announcement in exactly 12 minutes. Perhaps we could expedite this matter. The announcement, the Blackwood Foundation's most significant moment, revealing their new federal partnership worth $800 million over 4 years that will secure their legacy forever. Naturally, Grace adds sweetly, we cannot have interruptions during such a pivotal evening. A Chicago Tribune reporter in the corner looks up from his device, suddenly alert. He recognizes the business card the guard still holds. Jade notices his expression shift. A slight smile touches her lips, the first crack in her composed facade. "I understand your position," she says to Preston. "Time is precious, especially when millions in federal contracts are at stake." "Precisely." He nods approvingly. "I'm pleased you grasp the significance of tonight." The irony escapes him entirely. Vanessa gestures toward the service elevator area. "The main elevators are designated for our guests this evening. I'm certain you comprehend." It's the ultimate humiliation. Before 180 of Chicago's elite, they're directing her toward the staff exit. The Instagram live viewer count reaches 11,000. Comments flood faster than anyone can process. The hashtag #OneBlackwoodGala begins trending in Chicago. But inside this granite and crystal sanctuary, the family remains blissfully unaware of the digital storm brewing. Marcus adds a caption to his story. "When networking goes wrong, Dad maintains standards." The Tribune reporter quietly opens his laptop. His fingers hover over the keyboard as he observes Jade's reaction. She takes a step toward the service elevators, then stops. Her phone buzzes, a text message that subtly alters her expression. "Actually," she says, turning back to face the family, "I think I'll wait for the main elevators." "Excuse me?" Vanessa's voice climbs an octave. "I said I'll wait." Jade's tone remains conversational, but there's steel underneath. "I have some communications to make while we resolve this." She retrieves her phone from her evening bag. The screen shows 4 missed calls from Federal Contracting Board. The Tribune reporter's eyes widen. He recognizes that designation. He knows exactly what it means for tonight's announcement. "Ma'am," the guard says uncertainly, "we really need to—" 11 minutes, Jade says softly, checking her watch. "Isn't that what you said, Mr. Blackwood? 11 minutes until your announcement." Preston nods impatiently. "Yes, and we cannot have—" "Perfect." She dials a number with deliberate precision. That should provide adequate time. The phone rings once, twice. "Hello, Director," she says into the phone. "Yes, I understand you're in final preparations, but we need to discuss the Heritage Defense contract." The blood drains from Preston's face. Marcus stops filming. Vanessa's champagne glass slips from her fingers. Only Grace hasn't connected the pieces yet. "Who is she contacting?" she whispers. The Tribune reporter begins typing frantically. Dr. Jade Beaumont continues her conversation, her voice carrying clearly across the granite floor. "I'm afraid there's been a complication with tonight's announcement. The Heritage Club's granite floor could be cut with silence. Every conversation has ceased. 480 pairs of eyes focus on the woman in navy, speaking into her phone with surgical precision. "Yes, Director." "I understand the contracts were executed last week," Jade continues, her voice carrying across the penthouse. "But circumstances have evolved." Preston steps forward, his face ashen. "Excuse me, miss, but who exactly are you calling?" Jade holds up one finger, in a gesture so naturally authoritative that Chicago's most powerful patriarch actually stops mid-sentence. The Instagram live viewer count explodes. 17,000, 21,000, 26,000. Comments stream like digital wildfire. She said, "Heritage Defense Contract OMG, Blackwood about to get destroyed. This woman is somebody, family about to learn today." But inside their granite bubble, the Blackwoods remain oblivious to the digital tsunami building around them. Vanessa grabs her father's arm. "Daddy, what's Heritage Defense? Should we recognize that name?" Grace fans herself with her auction paddle. "It sounds familiar. Wasn't that mentioned in the board meeting minutes?" Marcus lowers his phone. For the first time tonight, he appears uncertain. "Wait, isn't that the contract we're announcing the partnership for?" The Tribune reporter David Chen types frantically on his laptop. His article is already forming. Blackwood Foundation Gala becomes public relations catastrophe. 9 minutes to announcement, declares the event coordinator through her headset. 9 minutes to the heritage revelation. Preston's hand trembles as he adjusts his cufflinks. "Perhaps we should postpone." "No postponement necessary," Jade says, ending her call. She slides the phone back into her evening bag with deliberate calm. "I simply wanted to clarify some details." The security guards exchange glances. The senior one whispers into his radio, "Control, we might need the club director." Dr. Rebecca Miller pushes through the crowd. Vanessa, I really think... Rebecca, please. Grace's voice has lost its earlier warmth. This is a family matter now. Family matter. Jade tilts her head slightly. Interesting word choice, Mrs. Blackwood. The way she pronounces the name, with precise articulation and subtle emphasis, sends a chill through the room. This isn't someone guessing at social dynamics. This is someone who knows exactly who they're dealing with. Marcus's phone pings with notifications. His Instagram story has been shared 623 times in the last 4 minutes. Someone tagged CNN. Another person shared it to TikTok. The hashtag #RyBlackwoodRacist is starting to trend. Ma'am, the security guard attempts again. We really need to resolve this situation. Resolution, Jade nods thoughtfully. Yes, that's precisely what we need, Mr. Blackwood. What would you estimate your company's quarterly revenue was last period? The question hangs in the air like a loaded weapon. I beg your pardon? Preston's voice cracks slightly. Your revenue. Blackwood Industries Q3 2024. Approximately $623 million if memory serves. The number is exact, too exact for someone who shouldn't know it. Vanessa's face pales. How could you possibly... Public filings, Jade says simply. Federal disclosure documents are quite informative. David Chen stops typing. He knows those filings by heart. The number is correct to the dollar. 8 minutes, the coordinator announces. The crowd presses closer. What began as entertainment has become something else entirely. The energy in the room shifts from mockery to anticipation to something approaching dread. A waiter appears with champagne, but no one is drinking. The crystal glasses sit untouched on silver trays. I don't understand what you're implying, Grace says, but her voice wavers. I'm not implying anything, Jade replies. I'm simply stating facts. Your company's market position, your upcoming announcement, your need for strategic federal partnerships to maintain growth. She speaks like someone reading from a quarterly report she's memorized. Marcus frantically Googles Beaumont Federal Consulting on his phone. The search results make his blood run cold. $12 billion in federal contracts managed annually, one of the top government consulting firms in North America. Primary liaison for Department of Defense contracts. He shows the screen to Vanessa, who goes white. 7 minutes to announcement. The event staff are starting to look worried. Photographers adjust their equipment. A string quartet in the corner continues playing, oblivious to the brewing storm. Preston tries to regain control. Young lady, I don't know what game you're playing. Game? Jade's laugh is soft, almost musical. Mr. Blackwood, I never play games with federal business. The word federal lands like a physical blow. David Chen's fingers fly across his keyboard. He's connecting dots that paint a picture the Blackwood family hasn't seen yet. Beaumont Federal Consulting isn't just any government firm. They're the kind of organization that makes or breaks companies like Blackwood Industries through federal contract approvals. The Instagram live count hits 34,000 viewers. Comments are coming too fast to read. Someone's screen recorded the entire encounter. Another person shared it to LinkedIn with the caption, "When privilege meets federal authority." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice," the security guard says. My voice? Jade looks genuinely surprised. I'm speaking normally. Perhaps the acoustics in here are better than you realized. She's right. The penthouse's granite and crystal construction carries sound perfectly. Every word has reached every corner of the room. 6 minutes. A bead of sweat appears on Preston's forehead despite the air conditioning. Grace clutches her emerald bracelet. Preston, maybe we should call Robert. Robert Fitzgerald, their corporate attorney. Excellent suggestion, Jade agrees. You might want to have legal counsel review your federal partnership agreements, particularly the clauses regarding compliance and public image. The statement is casual, conversational, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. Vanessa's hands shake as she fumbles with her own phone. She needs to call someone, anyone, who can make sense of this situation. Marcus has stopped filming entirely. The phone hangs limp in his hand as he stares at the search results for Dr. Jade Beaumont. Harvard JD, Georgetown PhD in federal policy, named one of government executives' most influential federal contractors 3 years running. Oh God, he whispers. The whisper carries in the granite acoustics. Several guests hear it and turn to look. Dr. Miller steps forward again. Perhaps we should all take a breath and 5 minutes to announcement. The coordinator's voice cuts through the suggestion. Jade checks her watch. The same understated platinum timepiece that suddenly seems less humble and more purposeful. Time is indeed valuable, she murmurs, echoing Preston's earlier words, especially when federal reputations are on the line. The Tribune reporter hits send on his preliminary article. The headline reads, Blackwood Foundation Gala devolves into racial incident as mystery woman challenges family dynasty. But David Chen is already working on the follow-up piece because he knows something the Blackwoods don't know yet. He knows exactly who Dr. Jade Beaumont is, and he knows what she's capable of doing to companies that cross her. The revelation is building. The room can feel it like pressure before a storm. 4 minutes, the coordinator announces, her voice tight with growing panic. Jade smiles, the first genuine expression she's shown all evening. It's not a comforting smile. The event coordinator's voice wavers through her headset like a prayer to an absent god. Behind the scenes, event staff exchange worried glances, their clipboards trembling in their hands. The program cannot be delayed. Too many cameras, too much money, too much reputation at stake. The choreographed precision of Chicago's social elite is about to collapse into chaos. Jade's phone buzzes again, the vibration cutting through the crystal air like a tuning fork. She glances at the screen and her expression shifts, not to worry, but to something resembling final decision. The kind of expression surgeons wear before the first incision. "Excuse me for just one moment," she says to the assembled crowd, as if she's stepping away from a pleasant dinner conversation rather than a public execution. Her voice carries the casual authority of someone who has never needed to raise it to be heard. The phone call connects on the first ring, professional courtesy at its highest level. "Director, it's Jade." "Yes, I'm still at the event." Her voice carries clearly across the granite expanse, each word striking the crystal fixtures like a bell tolling. "I need you to execute the Heritage Defense withdrawal immediately." The words hit the room like a demolition charge detonating in a cathedral. Preston stumbles backward, as if physically struck, his hand grasping for the granite pillar behind him. His platinum timepiece catches the fixture light, but the elegant watch suddenly looks like jewelry on a corpse. "Wait, what did you say?" Vanessa grabs her father's arm with desperate fingers, her manicured nails digging crescents into his sleeve. "Daddy, what's Heritage Defense withdrawal? What does that mean?" But even as she asks, something in her voice suggests she already knows. This is the sound of their world ending. But Preston can't answer, can't breathe. His face has gone the color of expensive fabric drained of life. The gray of old money turned to ash. The number that's about to be revealed will destroy everything they've built in 3 generations. The penthouse crowd leans forward collectively, like observers watching a controlled demolition. Everyone understands they're witnessing something unprecedented in Chicago's social architecture. "Yes, I understand the implications completely," Jade continues into her phone, her tone as measured as a quarterly earnings report. $800 million. Yes, the entire partnership. Cancel it. Execute the withdrawal immediately. The number hangs in the crystal air like a death sentence. Grace's emerald bracelet seems to tighten around her wrist. Did she say million? Marcus drops his phone entirely. It clatters against granite with a sound like breaking bones. David Chen's laptop screen reflects his wide eyes as he types frantically. Breaking mystery woman at Blackwood Gala appears to control $800 million Heritage Defense Partnership. The Instagram live view account explodes past 67,000. Comments stream too fast to read, but certain words flash repeatedly. Queen. Destroyed. Power move. "I don't understand," Vanessa whispers, but her voice carries in the acoustics. "Who is this woman?" Dr. Rebecca Miller steps forward, her medical training making her the first to recognize a crisis requiring intervention. "Perhaps I should introduce myself to Dr. Beaumont," she says clearly. "Dr. Jade Beaumont, chair of the Federal Contracting Review Board." The name lands like a bomb in still water. The ripples spread instantly. Whispers explode across the penthouse. Federal Contracting Review Board, $12 billion in oversight. That's the woman who restructured defense contracting. Fortune cover story. Preston leans heavily against the granite pillar. His timepiece, which seemed so impressive 20 minutes ago, now looks like a child's toy compared to the quiet authority radiating from the woman in the sophisticated navy dress. 3 minutes to announcement. The coordinator's voice cracks slightly, but there will be no announcement. Marcus scrambles to pick up his phone, his hands shaking. The Google results stare back at him like an indictment. Doctor. Jade Beaumont, 42, Chair Federal Contracting Review Board. Harvard JD 2008. Georgetown PhD Federal Policy 2011. Government Executives Most Influential 2021-2023. Authority over $847 billion in annual federal contracts. Known for rapid contract restructuring and compliance enforcement. Oh God, he breathes. Oh God, we're completely finished. The phone call continues. Jade's voice remains conversational, professional, devastating. Yes, Director. I know the contracts were finalized last week, but material changes in circumstances void the good faith provisions. Section 23C specifically allows termination for reputational damage to federal partnerships. She recites the legal language from memory, as if she's reading from the document itself. Vanessa's champagne glass finally falls from her nerveless fingers. It shatters against granite with a crystalline scream. The sound makes everyone jump except Jade, who continues speaking, as if breaking crystal is simply background noise in her world. No, I don't need to review the termination fees. The Federal Contracting Board will absorb them. Consider it a cost of maintaining federal integrity. Preston finds his voice, but it comes out as a croak. Dr. Beaumont, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. She holds up one finger again, the same gesture that stopped him before, but now it carries the weight of $847 billion in federal authority behind it. Director, I'll call you back in 8 minutes with the final details. Yes, I know this affects the defense sector announcement. We'll find another partner, a better partner. She ends the call and looks directly at Preston. The silence stretches like a taut wire. David Chen's fingers hover over his keyboard, afraid to break the moment with typing sounds. This is the story of his career unfolding in real time. 2 minutes to announcement. The event coordinator's voice is barely a whisper now. Behind the scenes, staff are frantically calling executives, trying to understand if tonight's program should proceed. Grace Blackwood, who has never been at a loss for words in 68 years of Chicago society, opens and closes her mouth like a landed fish. Vanessa tries to salvage something from the wreckage. Dr. Beaumont, I'm sure we can work this out. There was clearly a communication breakdown. Communication breakdown. Jade tests the phrase like she's tasting wine. Interesting way to characterize what just happened. She looks around the circle of faces. 4 members of one of Chicago's most powerful families, 2 security guards, a growing crowd of witnesses, and the digital audience of nearly 70,000 people watching this unfold in real time. Let me see if I understand the communication correctly, she continues, her voice still calm, still controlled, still devastating. The real accounting is about to begin. I arrived at this event, an event for which I have a legitimate invitation, by the way, and was immediately told I didn't belong here. That's not exactly, Vanessa starts. Mrs. Blackwood suggested this gathering was for people of a certain caliber. Your son implied it wasn't charity night, suggesting I was somehow undeserving of charity. Your husband called security to have me removed. And you, Mr. Blackwood, questioned whether my invitation was duplicated. She recites their actions like a federal prosecutor reading charges. The Instagram live comments explode with fire emojis and crown symbols. Someone types, "She's reading them for filth." Marcus stares at his phone screen where the government executive article about Dr. Beaumont is still open. The headline reads, "The Woman Who Rebuilt Federal Contracting." The subtitle, "How Jade Beaumont's Oversight Saved Taxpayers $200 billion and Revolutionized Government Efficiency." He realizes with growing horror that he filmed himself mocking one of the most powerful people in federal government. 1 minute to announcement. Preston straightens his bow tie with shaking hands. Dr. Beaumont, please. My family. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But destroying our partnership won't just hurt us. It will affect thousands of jobs, community programs, federal initiatives. Mr. Blackwood. Her voice cuts through his plea like a blade. Do you know what the Federal Contracting Review Board's mission statement is? He shakes his head mutely. Ensuring federal partnerships with organizations that demonstrate integrity, compliance, and commitment to equal opportunity. Each word hits like a hammer blow. Your family just demonstrated in front of 180 witnesses and 70,000 social media viewers exactly how committed you are to equal opportunity. The math is brutal and precise. Grace clutches her husband's arm. Preston, do something. Call the board, call Robert, call someone. But Preston knows there's no one to call. No amount of old money influence can undo what just happened. Not when it's been broadcast live to five-figure audiences across multiple platforms. If you think this kind of discrimination should have consequences, type accountability in the comments below. 30 seconds to announcement. The event coordinator's voice breaks entirely. Someone needs to tell the photographers, the reporters, the board members, the major donors, all waiting for tonight's triumphant revelation that there will be no announcement. That the Blackwood Foundation's biggest moment has become their worst nightmare. Jade checks her understated platinum watch. The same timepiece that seemed so modest 30 minutes ago now looks like the most powerful accessory in the room. I believe your announcement time has arrived, she says quietly. The family stares at her in collective devastation. Vanessa's makeup has begun to smudge. Grace's emerald bracelet seems to weigh 1,000 pounds. Marcus clutches his phone like a lifeline to a sinking ship. Preston looks like he's aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Time for announcement. The coordinator's voice cracks across the penthouse like a whip. But Jade Beaumont isn't finished yet. She has one more revelation to deliver, one final piece of information that will transform this from a business disaster into a complete federal restructuring. She reaches into her sophisticated navy evening bag and withdraws a single sheet of paper. Cream-colored, expensive stock, federal letterhead. There's something else you should know, she says, unfolding the document with deliberate care. The paper rustles in the granite silence like thunder. The Federal Contracting Review Board doesn't just control the Heritage Defense Partnership. Her smile returns, that same unsettling expression that ended the last section. We also maintain oversight authority over every federal contract your company has held for the past 7 years. The revelation detonates like a nuclear bomb in the crystal penthouse air. The silence that follows is the sound of an empire falling. The document in her hands isn't just about one contract. It's about their entire federal business, worth $3 billion over 7 years. Dr. Rebecca Miller steps forward again, her medical instincts recognizing someone going into shock. Several guests are literally swaying on their feet. The magnitude of what they're witnessing, the complete destruction of a Chicago dynasty, is almost too much to process. David Chen's hands fly across his keyboard. Explosive. Federal Contracting Chair reveals total oversight of Blackwood Industries' $3 billion federal portfolio during viral discrimination incident. Preston releases the granite pillar and straightens his bow tie with trembling fingers. When facing total destruction, maintain dignity. But dignity won't save them from what's coming next. Dr. Beaumont, perhaps we can discuss this privately. Privately? Jade's voice carries amusement that cuts like a scalpel. Mr. Blackwood, your family just provided a masterclass in public humiliation. I think transparency is exactly what this situation requires. She unfolds the federal document completely, the cream-colored paper rustling like autumn leaves in a graveyard. The letterhead reads, Federal Contracting Review Board, Compliance Division. According to Federal Register Filing 47B filed 14 months ago, the Federal Contracting Review Board assumed comprehensive oversight of all heritage defense sector contracts valued above $50 million. The numbers are precise, devastating, undeniable. Marcus's cracked phone screen reflects his pale face as he Googles frantically. Comprehensive oversight, he whispers. That means every contract we have. For Vanessa's champagne glass finally falls from nerveless fingers. The crystal explosion against granite sounds like a small bomb detonating. Comprehensive oversight means what exactly? Grace's voice trembles. Jade continues with the precision of a federal auditor. Every contract, every renewal, every modification requires board approval. Heritage Defense represents 67% of your federal revenue. Defense Logistics, another 23%. Federal Facility Management, 10%. She recites the percentages like a forensic accountant. The Instagram Live audience has swelled to 89,000 viewers. Comments stream faster than water breaking through a dam. She controls everything. Federal Queen family is finished. Racist family getting owned by black excellence. David Chen's fingers fly across his keyboard. Breaking. Dr. Jade Beaumont reveals comprehensive federal oversight of Blackwood Industries' entire government portfolio. Grace clutches her emerald bracelet like a rosary. But that means you could terminate every federal contract we hold. Jade's tone remains conversational. Yes, Mrs. Blackwood, that's exactly what it means. The legal implications cascade through the room like dominoes falling. Every guest with corporate experience understands. With comprehensive oversight authority, Dr. Beaumont doesn't just have influence over one contract. She has control over their entire federal business. Dr. Rebecca Miller steps forward, her medical training recognizing when a patient is going into shock. Perhaps we should... Dr. Miller. Jade's acknowledgement is warm, respectful. I appreciate your concern, but this is a federal compliance matter that requires immediate attention. She turns back to the Blackwood family, her platinum watch catching the crystal light. Your company's total revenue is approximately $1 billion annually. Federal contracts represent $1. $4 billion of that total, 67% of your entire business. That's not revenue I oversee lightly. Preston tries to regain footing. Dr. Beaumont, the Federal Contracting Board has been an excellent partner. Your oversight has improved our operations, increased efficiency. 12% improvement in delivery times, she interrupts. Above standard performance, I agree, but operational efficiency isn't everything, Mr. Blackwood. The room holds its breath. The Federal Contracting Review Board has a fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers, but we also have standards: ethical compliance, equal opportunity employment, social responsibility. Each phrase lands like a federal gavel strike. Tonight, in front of 89,000 social media witnesses, your family demonstrated standards that are fundamentally incompatible with federal partnership requirements. Vanessa steps forward desperately. Dr. Beaumont, we made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but surely we can what? Pretend the last 40 minutes didn't happen? Pretend 89,000 people didn't watch your family attempt to publicly humiliate someone based solely on race. The accusation hangs in the crystal air like carbon monoxide, invisible, lethal, undeniable. Marcus looks at his shattered phone screen, watching his Instagram story being shared across the digital universe. CNN Business has picked it up. Fox Business is calling. The Chicago Tribune is crafting headlines. As chair of the Federal Contracting Review Board, Jade continues, I'm calling an emergency compliance review for Monday morning, 8 m sharp. Preston's face goes ashen. Emergency compliance review to assess adherence to federal equal opportunity requirements, social responsibility standards, and ethical conduct provisions. Each agenda item hits like a sledgehammer to a foundation. Furthermore, I'm recommending immediate suspension of all federal contract activities pending investigation into corporate culture and compliance with federal anti-discrimination statutes. Vanessa staggers backward. Suspension? But we're in the middle of 3 major federal projects. You were in the middle of 3 major federal projects, Jade corrects gently. As of this moment, your federal partnerships are under review by the board. My recommendation carries significant weight with federal oversight committees. The mathematics are brutal. With comprehensive oversight authority, her recommendations don't just carry weight, they carry the force of federal law. Grace finds her voice, though it emerges as barely a whisper. Dr. Beaumont, please. Our family has built this company over 3 generations. Our reputation, our legacy, your reputation. Jade's eyebrows rise slightly. Mrs. Blackwood, your reputation is currently trending on 8 different social media platforms. Blackwood Racist has won 7 million impressions and growing. She doesn't need to check her phone to know these numbers. People like Dr. Jade Beaumont have teams monitoring digital sentiment in real time. Your legacy is being written right now in the comments of 89,000 people who watched your family's true character revealed under pressure. The security guards exchange glances. They signed up to escort wealthy people to their cars, not to witness the federal equivalent of a public execution. Preston plays his final card. The jobs, Dr. Beaumont. Blackwood Industries employs 18,000 people across 8 states. Surely you won't jeopardize their livelihoods over a personal dispute. Personal dispute? Jade's voice sharpens like a blade finding its edge. Mr. Blackwood, this isn't personal. This is federal business, the Federal Contracting Review Board's business. She checks her platinum watch with deliberate precision. Your company's Q4 revenue was $623 million. Federal contracts represented $417 million of that total, 67% of your quarterly earnings. Without them, you face immediate bankruptcy. The numbers fall like artillery strikes, each calculation devastating in its accuracy. But the 18,000 employees you mentioned, they'll be fine. The Federal Contracting Board specializes in partnership transitions that protect worker interests while maintaining operational continuity. Translation: she can transfer their federal contracts to other companies and save every job while destroying the Blackwood family. Vanessa makes one last desperate attempt. Our board won't support this. The shareholders won't. Your shareholders. Jade's laugh is soft, musical, terrifying. Vanessa, when 67% of your revenue disappears overnight, shareholder support becomes irrelevant. David Chen hits publish on his article. The headline reads, Blackwood Industries faces federal review as oversight chair calls emergency compliance investigation following viral racism incident. Within seconds, the story begins appearing in Bloomberg feeds, Reuters alerts, and Wall Street Journal notifications across the financial district. Marcus watches his phone screen with horror as his Instagram metrics explode. 800,000 views on the story where he mocked Dr. Beaumont. 80,000 shares. Comments calling for boycotts, investigations, federal accountability. The emergency compliance review will address 4 primary issues, Jade continues, with the precision of someone who has restructured federal partnerships before. First, immediate implementation of comprehensive federal compliance training for all management levels. Second, establishment of a $30 million fund for minority contractor development partnerships. Third, replacement of current senior leadership with executives committed to federal equal opportunity standards. Fourth, independent federal monitor oversight for 24 months. Each point is a nail in the coffin of the old Blackwood Industries. The alternative, she adds quietly, is immediate termination of all federal contracts, which, given recent events, I'm confident federal oversight committees would support unanimously. The room processes this nuclear option. Complete federal contract termination would mean immediate bankruptcy for Blackwood Industries. The company that took a century to build would cease to exist within 30 days. The mathematics are inescapable. Without federal contracts, they have no business. Preston looks around the granite penthouse at the crystal fixtures his great-grandfather installed in 1923, at the oil portraits of 4 generations of Blackwood patriarchs lining the mahogany walls. Each painting represents decades of accumulated power, influence, and wealth, at the empire that took a century to build and 40 minutes to destroy. The weight of generational legacy presses down on him like physical force. His grandfather built the first federal contracts during World War II. His father expanded them through the Cold War. Preston himself had grown the federal portfolio to $1.4 billion annually. All of it now hanging by a thread, held by the woman in the navy dress who his family had just humiliated. "What do you want from us?" he asks, his voice barely audible above the crystal chandelier's soft humming. The question carries the weight of absolute defeat. This isn't negotiation. It's unconditional surrender. Jade folds the federal document and returns it to her evening bag with practiced precision. The cream-colored paper disappears like evidence of their destruction. "I want what the Federal Contracting Review Board has always wanted, Mr. Blackwood, a partner we can trust with taxpayer dollars." The phrase taxpayer dollars hits like a reminder of what federal contracts really represent. Public trust, not private privilege. The Blackwood family had forgotten that fundamental truth somewhere between generations of inherited wealth and assumed entitlement. Our standards aren't negotiable, Jade continues, her voice carrying the authority of federal oversight. Equal opportunity isn't a suggestion. Professional respect isn't optional. When companies demonstrate they cannot maintain these basic requirements, the Federal Contracting Review Board acts decisively. The weight of her words settles over the family like a shroud. This isn't personal vendetta, it's institutional accountability. The federal government doesn't tolerate discrimination from its contractors, regardless of their social status or historical connections. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Sharp, Federal Building, Suite 2847. Don't be late. She turns to leave, then pauses. The hesitation is calculated, designed to deliver maximum impact. Oh, and Mr. Blackwood, you might want to prepare a public statement. Something authentic, the kind that acknowledges harm and commits to genuine change. The Federal Review Board will expect it by Wednesday. The specificity of her requirements, the exact time, the suite number, the Wednesday deadline, demonstrates the depth of her authority. This isn't a request or suggestion. These are federal compliance requirements with the force of law behind them. The Instagram live count hits 97,000 viewers. Comments stream faster than human comprehension. Federal queen destroyed them. Racist family getting federal justice. She controls their entire business. Accountability in real time. The digital reckoning has only just begun, but the real consequences will unfold in federal offices and congressional committees. David Chen saves his article. Tomorrow's front page of the Chicago Tribune business section will read, Federal Authority Destroys Chicago Dynasty in 40 Minutes. The subheading, Blackwood Industries faces complete federal contract review following viral discrimination incident. The story will be picked up by every major business publication within hours. Dr. Rebecca Miller approaches Jade as she moves toward the main elevators, her medical instincts compelling her to provide some form of closure to the traumatic scene they've all witnessed. Dr. Beaumont, I want you to know, not everyone here shares their views. Some of us have been trying to change these attitudes for years. Jade's smile is genuine for the first time all evening, warming her entire expression. I know, Dr. Miller. Change happens one conversation at a time. Sometimes those conversations need to be very public to be effective. Her acknowledgement validates the quiet allies who have been fighting discrimination within Chicago's elite circles. But systemic change, Jade continues, requires institutional power. Personal goodwill isn't enough when federal contracts and taxpayer money are involved. The Federal Contracting Review Board exists precisely because individual conscience isn't sufficient to guarantee equal treatment. The elevator doors open with a soft chime that sounds like a bell tolling. As Jade steps inside, she turns back to face the crowd one final time. Her position in the elevator doorway frames her like a portrait. The federal authority who just dismantled a dynasty in 40 minutes. Have a good evening, everyone. And remember, federal contracts are a privilege, not a right. That privilege can be revoked when contractors demonstrate they cannot uphold federal standards. The statement carries implications far beyond the Blackwood family. Every person in that room who holds federal contracts or works with federal contractors understands the warning. The doors close with finality, leaving behind a room full of Chicago's elite who just witnessed the complete destruction of one of their most powerful families. But more than destruction, they witnessed accountability. They saw what happens when federal authority confronts private privilege and finds it wanting. The silence that follows is deafening. 180 of Chicago's most powerful people stand in stunned quiet, processing what they've just witnessed. The casual racism they've tolerated or ignored for decades just cost their peers $800 million and potentially their entire federal business. Some guests begin leaving immediately, unwilling to be associated with the Blackwood family's disgrace. Others cluster in small groups, whispering about their own federal contracts and wondering if their behavior might face similar scrutiny. The social dynamics of the room have shifted permanently. Preston remains standing by the granite pillar, his platinum watch still ticking, but now marking time toward Monday morning's federal reckoning. Grace clutches her emerald bracelet like a rosary, perhaps finally understanding that jewelry and social status provide no protection against federal compliance requirements. Marcus stares at his phone screen, where notifications continue exploding. Millions of views, thousands of shares, hundreds of news organizations requesting interviews. His racist commentary is now preserved forever in digital amber, available for federal investigators, future employers, and anyone who searches his name. Vanessa checks her own phone with trembling hands. Email notifications from board members, investors, federal contract managers, and crisis communication specialists flood her inbox. The corporate apparatus is already mobilizing for damage control, but they all know the damage may be irreversible. The doors close, leaving behind a room full of Chicago's elite who just witnessed the complete destruction of one of their most powerful families. But the real consequences are only beginning. Monday morning will bring federal investigators, congressional inquiries, and the complete audit of everything the Blackwood family built. The woman in the navy dress just triggered the most comprehensive federal investigation in Chicago business history. Monday morning, 8:03 a.m. The federal building's 28th floor has never felt more imposing. Suite 2847 bears a simple placard, Federal Contracting Review Board, Compliance Division. The sterile lighting and government-issue furniture create an atmosphere of institutional authority that makes corporate boardrooms feel like playgrounds. Preston Blackwood sits in what amounts to the defendant's chair, flanked by his attorney Robert Fitzgerald and a crisis communications specialist who looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. The mahogany confidence of his corporate boardroom has been replaced by the unforgiving fluorescence of federal oversight. Dr. Jade Beaumont enters precisely on time, flanked by 2 federal compliance attorneys, a Department of Justice liaison, and a corporate restructuring specialist with clearance for sensitive government contracts. Her presence transforms the room's energy from nervous anticipation to surgical precision. "Good morning," she says, settling into the chair directly across from Preston. The symbolism isn't lost on anyone. The old guard facing the new reality, private privilege confronting federal authority. The American flag behind her chair serves as a reminder that this isn't a business negotiation. This is a federal compliance hearing with the power to destroy companies. The preliminary documentation is extensive. Federal investigators had worked through the weekend, analyzing every Blackwood Industries contract, every compliance report, every diversity metric from the past 7 years. The Instagram live video has been entered into the federal record as evidence of discriminatory conduct by senior leadership. Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Beaumont begins, consulting a thick folder of federal documents. The Federal Contracting Review Board has completed a preliminary assessment of Blackwood Industries' compliance with federal equal opportunity requirements. The findings are concerning. She slides a document across the table. The letterhead reads Federal Contracting Review Board, Preliminary Compliance Assessment. The cover page is marked Confidential Federal Investigation. Preston's hands shake as he opens it. Page 3 details demographic analysis of your senior management team over the past decade. 0 Black executives above director level. Page 7 analyzes supplier diversity metrics, 8% minority contractors compared to the federal requirement of 23%. Page 12 reviews discrimination complaints, 14 filed, all dismissed internally without federal notification. Each statistic lands like a federal indictment. The numbers reveal a pattern of systematic exclusion that extends far beyond Saturday night's incident. The viral video wasn't an aberration, it was confirmation of institutional discrimination. Furthermore, Dr. Beaumont continues, federal law requires contractors to maintain detailed records of diversity initiatives, bias training, and inclusive leadership development. Our audit reveals Blackwood Industries has reported false compliance data to federal oversight committees for 6 consecutive years. False federal reporting carries criminal penalties. Preston's attorney leans forward, recognizing the legal jeopardy his client now faces. This isn't just about losing contracts. This is about potential federal prosecution for fraudulent compliance reporting. The emergency board vote is scheduled for 10 a.m., Dr. Beaumont announces, checking her platinum watch. Based on federal compliance requirements and documented discriminatory conduct, I'll be recommending immediate suspension of all federal contracting privileges pending comprehensive investigation. The recommendation carries the weight of federal law. Unlike corporate board votes, federal compliance decisions aren't subject to shareholder influence or corporate politics. When the Federal Contracting Review Board suspends a company's privileges, the decision is final and immediate. Suspension parameters will include the following, she continues, reading from official federal guidelines. Immediate cessation of all federal contract activities, mandatory return of federal equipment and sensitive materials, comprehensive audit of all financial records related to federal contracts, independent monitor oversight of all business operations. Each parameter represents the complete federal takeover of Blackwood Industries' primary revenue source. Without federal contracts, the company becomes a shell operation overnight. Preston's century-old family empire is being dismantled with bureaucratic precision. Robert Fitzgerald attempts damage control. Dr. Beaumont, surely there's room for negotiation. Mr. Blackwood acknowledges mistakes were made, and the family is committed to comprehensive reform. Mr. Fitzgerald, Dr. Beaumont interrupts, federal compliance isn't negotiable. When contractors demonstrate inability to maintain equal opportunity standards, the Federal Contracting Review Board acts decisively. Taxpayer money cannot support discriminatory business practices, regardless of a company's historical relationships or reform promises. The federal perspective is uncompromising. Private companies don't negotiate with federal oversight. They comply or lose access to government contracts. The Blackwood family's social connections and generational wealth provide no protection against federal compliance requirements. The 10 a.m. board vote will address immediate suspension, Dr. Beaumont explains. However, the comprehensive investigation will require 6 to 8 months. During this period, Blackwood Industries may pursue federal contract reinstatement through demonstrated compliance improvements. She slides another document across the table, a thick manual titled Federal Contractor Compliance Restoration Program. The cover bears official federal seals and warnings about criminal penalties for non-compliance. Restoration requirements include complete leadership restructuring, independent diversity training for all employees, establishment of federally monitored supplier diversity programs, and quarterly compliance reporting for 5 years. The estimated cost of full compliance restoration is $47 million. The number represents more than the company's annual profit. Compliance restoration would bankrupt them even if they regained federal contracts. The choice isn't between maintaining the status quo or accepting change. It's between expensive transformation or complete business failure. Preston stares at the restoration manual, realizing his options have been reduced to corporate extinction or federally supervised rebirth. The empire his grandfather built during World War II, that his father expanded through the Cold War, that he had grown to $4 billion annually, now depends entirely on the approval of the woman his family humiliated Saturday night. There is one alternative, Dr. Beaumont adds quietly. The room holds its breath. Voluntary compliance transformation under federal partnership guidance. Companies that proactively demonstrate commitment to federal standards can reduce restoration timeline to 18 months and compliance costs to $23 million. Even the reduced option represents financial devastation and federal oversight that would fundamentally change how Blackwood Industries operates. But it's the only path that preserves any hope of business continuation. The choice is yours, Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Beaumont concludes. Federal investigation with potential criminal referrals, expensive compliance restoration, voluntary transformation under federal guidance, or complete federal contract termination. You have until 9:45 a.m. to decide. The 15-minute deadline creates artificial time pressure, forcing Preston to make the most important decision in his company's history without adequate deliberation. But Dr. Beaumont understands that desperate people make desperate choices, and desperate compliance is better than no compliance. Preston looks at his platinum watch, 8:47 a.m. 58 minutes to decide whether to save his company through federal humiliation or watch it die with his pride intact. The choice will determine not just his family's financial future, but their entire social standing in Chicago's elite circles. At 9:43 a.m., Preston Blackwood makes the most difficult decision of his life. We accept voluntary compliance transformation under federal guidance. His voice carries the weight of absolute defeat, mixed with desperate hope. The words taste like ash, but they represent the only path to corporate survival. Dr. Beaumont nods with professional satisfaction. Excellent choice, Mr. Blackwood. The Federal Contracting Review Board appreciates your cooperation. She signals to her staff, who immediately begin distributing thick folders marked Voluntary Compliance Transformation Agreement, Confidential. Immediate implementation begins today, she announces, effective 10 a.m. And all Blackwood Industries senior management will be suspended pending federal compliance evaluation. Ms. Vanessa Blackwood, Mr. Marcus Blackwood, and Mrs. Grace Blackwood are hereby prohibited from any operational decision-making until completing federal sensitivity training and psychological evaluation. The suspension of his entire family from their own company hits Preston like physical violence. 4 generations of Blackwood leadership ends in a federal conference room because of 40 minutes of casual racism captured on social media. Interim leadership will be provided by Dr. Patricia Washington, a Georgetown federal policy graduate with 15 years of government compliance experience. Dr. Washington will serve as federal compliance officer with full operational authority until permanent leadership transition is complete. The irony of a black woman named Washington taking control of a company that just discriminated against a black woman named Beaumont isn't lost on anyone in the room. The federal government's choice of replacement leadership sends a clear message about consequences and accountability. Dr. Washington's first priority will be comprehensive staff evaluation and immediate diversity training implementation. All employees will undergo federal bias assessment, and any staff members found to have participated in discriminatory practices will be terminated immediately. The threat of mass terminations creates additional pressure. Blackwood Industries employs 18,000 people across 8 states. Federal investigators will now scrutinize every employee's conduct, social media presence, and workplace behavior. The viral video investigation will expand to include anyone who enabled or ignored discriminatory practices. Financial oversight will be provided by the Federal Contract Compliance Division. All company accounts, expenditures, and contracts require federal approval. Mr. Blackwood, you will maintain a ceremonial title but zero operational authority until compliance restoration is complete. Preston realizes he's become a figurehead in his own company. The federal government now controls Blackwood Industries more completely than any hostile takeover could achieve. His family name remains on the building, but federal oversight controls everything inside it. The $23 million compliance cost will be funded through mandatory executive salary reductions and asset liquidation. The Blackwood family's personal wealth will be audited to ensure compliance funding doesn't impact company operations or employee compensation. Personal financial destruction accompanies corporate humiliation. The family's private assets, real estate, investments, luxury items purchased with company profits, all subject to federal review and potential seizure for compliance funding. Dr. Beaumont slides another document across the table. Page 1 details the media communication strategy. All public statements require federal approval. The family will participate in mandatory public education campaigns about workplace discrimination and federal compliance requirements. The public education requirement means the Blackwood family will become poster children for federal anti-discrimination enforcement. Their humiliation will be replayed in training videos, compliance seminars, and government education programs nationwide. Page 15 outlines community service requirements. Each family member will complete 500 hours of volunteer service with minority-owned businesses and civil rights organizations. This service will be documented, monitored, and reported to federal oversight committees. Community service among the very populations they had discriminated against represents the ultimate reversal of privilege. The Blackwood family will spend 2 years serving communities they had previously excluded from their social and business circles. These incredible stories of federal justice and transformation inspire people all around the world. Let us know what country and city you're watching from so we can see how far these powerful messages of accountability are reaching. Timeline for compliance restoration is 18 months, Dr. Beaumont continues. Monthly federal audits, quarterly congressional reporting, and annual comprehensive review by the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Successful completion results in conditional federal contracting privileges with permanent monitoring. Even successful compliance restoration means permanent federal oversight. Blackwood Industries will never again operate independently. Federal monitors will observe every decision, review every contract, and evaluate every hire for signs of discriminatory practices. The transformation extends beyond the company to industry-wide implications. The Blackwood case will serve as a template for federal compliance enforcement across all government contractors. Your company's voluntary cooperation will be studied, replicated, and used to train federal investigators nationwide. Preston realizes his family's humiliation will be institutionalized as federal policy. Every government contractor in America will learn about the Blackwood case as an example of consequences for discriminatory conduct. Their destruction becomes educational material for federal compliance training. Dr. Washington will begin operational transition immediately, Dr. Beaumont announces. Federal monitors arrive this afternoon. All senior staff meetings require federal observation. Company communications will be monitored for compliance violations. Any attempt to circumvent federal oversight results in immediate contract termination and criminal referral. The comprehensiveness of federal control exceeds anything Preston imagined possible. His company becomes a government-supervised entity with federal observers monitoring every conversation, email, and business decision. The broader implications extend beyond Blackwood Industries. Word of the federal investigation spreads through Chicago's business community like wildfire. Other companies with federal contracts begin emergency diversity audits, terrified of facing similar federal scrutiny. The Chicago Business Journal publishes an emergency edition. Federal crackdown on contractor discrimination begins with Blackwood Industries. The article includes sidebar analysis of other major contractors' vulnerability to similar federal investigation. Within hours, 17 Chicago area companies initiate voluntary diversity reviews, hoping to avoid federal attention. The Blackwood case creates industry-wide panic about compliance standards and federal enforcement priorities. Federal oversight extends to the Blackwood Foundation's charitable activities. All foundation grants require federal review to ensure compliance with anti-discrimination requirements. Previous donations to organizations with discriminatory practices will be audited and potentially recovered. Even their charitable legacy faces federal investigation. Generations of Blackwood philanthropy will be scrutinized for patterns of exclusionary giving or support for discriminatory organizations. Dr. Beaumont checks her watch, a gesture that has become synonymous with federal authority and precise timing. Compliance transformation begins immediately. Dr. Washington will meet with all department heads at 2:00 p.m. Federal monitors arrive at 4:00 p.m. First quarterly report is due in 90 days. The rapid timeline prevents any opportunity for resistance or delay. Federal compliance moves with bureaucratic efficiency that private companies cannot match or obstruct. Preston signs the voluntary compliance agreement with hands that shake from more than fear. They shake with the knowledge that he just signed away his family's century-old empire to save it from complete destruction. But even salvation comes with a price that will haunt them forever. 6 months later, the transformation of Blackwood Industries is so complete that federal investigators use it as a model for contractor compliance restoration. The Chicago Tribune business section leads with the headline, "From Discrimination to Excellence, How Federal Oversight Transformed a Chicago Dynasty." Dr. Patricia Washington stands before the company's 18,000 employees via video conference, delivering the quarterly compliance report that has become a celebration of systematic change. This quarter marks our highest employee satisfaction ratings in company history, our strongest supplier diversity metrics, and our most successful federal contract performance scores. The numbers tell a story of complete organizational transformation. Employee satisfaction increased 34% after discriminatory management was removed. Productivity improved 28% when workplace harassment ended. Federal contract renewals reached 97% when compliance became genuine rather than performative. In the Heritage Club penthouse where everything began, a very different gathering takes place. The Federal Contractor Excellence Award ceremony honors companies that demonstrate exceptional compliance with equal opportunity requirements. Blackwood Industries receives the Transformation Achievement Award. Preston Blackwood accepts the award, but his role is ceremonial. The real recognition goes to Dr. Patricia Washington and her team of diverse executives who rebuilt the company's culture from the foundation up. Preston's acceptance speech, pre-approved by federal oversight, acknowledges the harm his family caused and the necessity of federal intervention. 18 months ago, my family demonstrated that privilege and prejudice can coexist with business success, he reads from prepared remarks. We learned that federal contracts represent taxpayer trust, not inherited entitlement. The Federal Contracting Review Board's intervention saved our company by forcing us to become worthy of that trust. The audience of 600 federal contractors understands the subtext. Preston's humiliation is their warning. Federal compliance isn't optional, and social status provides no protection against federal enforcement. Dr. Jade Beaumont delivers the keynote address, her words carrying the authority of successful federal intervention. Real change doesn't happen overnight. It happens when institutions choose accountability over comfort, compliance over convenience, and service over self-interest. The applause lasts 4 minutes, longer than any ovation in the Heritage Club's history. The personal transformations within the Blackwood family demonstrate the comprehensive nature of federal oversight. Vanessa Blackwood sits in the audience with her completely restructured leadership team. 2 vice presidents she hired from Howard University, 3 department heads recruited from Hispanic-serving institutions, and a Native American supply chain director who has revolutionized their supplier diversity program. Her transformation from privileged CEO to federally supervised executive required intensive psychological evaluation that revealed unconscious biases she never recognized. The process was humiliating but necessary. Federal psychologists documented how inherited privilege created automatic assumptions about competence, belonging, and worth. I discovered that my MBA didn't teach me how to recognize my own prejudices, she admits in her first post-compliance interview. Federal oversight forced me to confront beliefs I didn't even know I held. I thought business success proved my merit, but I learned that success built on exclusion isn't meritocracy. It's systemic discrimination. Marcus Blackwood's transformation proves most dramatic and public. His Instagram account, once filled with privileged mockery that triggered the federal investigation, becomes a platform for amplifying minority voices in federal contracting. His 3 million followers initially think it's performative until he begins donating 70% of his trust fund to minority business development. His Privilege Unchecked podcast reaches 1 million listeners monthly. Each episode examines how unconscious bias shapes federal contracting decisions. His most popular episode, The Night I Learned Federal Authority Doesn't Care About Your Daddy's Money, has 14 million downloads and is required listening in federal compliance training programs. I was raised to believe that social status and federal contracts were connected, he explains to podcast listeners. I learned that federal oversight exists precisely because people like me confuse privilege with competence. The Federal Contracting Review Board taught me that taxpayer money doesn't care about my social network. Grace Blackwood's foundation work undergoes complete restructuring under federal oversight. Her new focus on supporting Black women entrepreneurs in federal contracting leads to partnerships with federal supplier diversity programs and creates pathways for minority businesses to access government contracts. The Emerald Initiative, named after the bracelet she clutched during her family's public humiliation, provides both capital and mentorship to minority contractors seeking federal certification. The program achieves a 93% success rate in helping minority businesses win federal contracts. I spent decades using charity to maintain social status rather than create social change, she reflects during a foundation board meeting live-streamed to federal oversight committees. Federal monitoring taught me that authentic philanthropy requires redistributing power, not just wealth. The broader impact spreads through Chicago's business community like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. The Federal Compliance Alliance, founded 12 months after the Blackwood investigation, now includes 847 companies committed to measurable inclusion practices. Combined, these organizations manage $127 billion in federal contracts across North America. The Blackwood Standard becomes the benchmark for federal contractor compliance, referenced in congressional hearings and Department of Justice enforcement guidelines. Other companies facing discrimination complaints point to Blackwood Industries as proof that comprehensive federal intervention creates better outcomes than traditional corporate diversity initiatives. The voluntarily submitted compliance transformation becomes more effective than punitive contract termination. Federal investigators note that companies undergoing Blackwood-style transformation show 31% higher employee retention, 27% better contract performance, and 23% stronger supplier diversity metrics compared to companies with traditional diversity programs. The ripple effect extends to federal policy development. Senator Elizabeth Warren cites the Blackwood case during Banking Committee hearings on federal contractor oversight. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez references the transformation during Budget Committee discussions about compliance enforcement funding. The Blackwood investigation demonstrates that federal oversight works, Senator Warren states during televised hearings. When companies know that discriminatory conduct has real consequences, they choose compliance over confrontation. Federal enforcement saves taxpayer money by ensuring contracts go to the most qualified providers, not the most connected ones. The case becomes required study material in federal management programs at Georgetown, George Washington University, and American University. Students analyze how strategic federal intervention triumphed over corporate resistance, how accountability created sustainable change, and how compliance became profitable. Dr. Beaumont's approach, systematic rather than punitive, educational rather than merely punitive, influences congressional discussions about expanding federal oversight to additional industries. The success of contractor compliance transformation leads to proposals for similar oversight in healthcare, education, and infrastructure contracting. The final numbers validate federal intervention. By month 18, Blackwood Industries reports record performance, 39% increase in employee satisfaction, 31% improvement in federal contract renewals, 24% revenue growth, and 0 discrimination complaints. The company that nearly died from casual racism becomes a case study in how federal accountability creates sustainable success. Dr. Beaumont's oversight generates extraordinary results, not just financially, but in human dignity restored and potential unleashed. These are the real stories that matter. Black stories of strategic brilliance, federal stories of institutional accountability, life stories that demonstrate how powerful narratives of transformation emerge from even the darkest moments of privilege confronting authority. The transformation is complete, but the legacy is just beginning. 18 months after that viral moment, Dr. Jade Beaumont prepares to address the United Nations on how federal oversight can create global standards for contractor accountability. 18 months after that transformative evening at the Heritage Club, Dr. Jade Beaumont stands before the United Nations Global Compact Assembly in New York, delivering the keynote address on stakeholder capitalism in federal contracting. The Assembly Hall buzzes with 500 government leaders from 47 countries, all eager to understand how American federal oversight transformed a discriminatory company into a model of inclusive excellence. "Power," she begins, her voice carrying across the Assembly Hall with the same authority that dismantled the Blackwood Empire, "isn't about what you can destroy. It's about what you choose to build." Federal oversight exists not to punish private enterprise, but to ensure that taxpayer investment creates inclusive opportunity rather than systemic exclusion. The Blackwood Industries case study now appears in public administration curricula, from Georgetown to Oxford to Sciences Po. Students worldwide analyze how strategic federal intervention triumphed over corporate privilege, how accountability created sustainable value, and how compliance became more profitable than discrimination. The transformation of Blackwood Industries demonstrates three fundamental principles, Dr. Beaumont continues. First, federal contracts represent public trust, not private entitlement. Second, compliance oversight protects taxpayers and promotes excellence. Third, inclusive practices generate better business outcomes than exclusionary traditions. Behind her, a massive screen displays the Blackwood transformation metrics: 39% increase in employee satisfaction, 31% improvement in contract performance, 24% revenue growth, 93% supplier diversity achievement, and 0 discrimination complaints for 18 consecutive months. The numbers validate federal intervention as sound fiscal policy, not just social justice. In the audience, representatives from the European Union, United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia take detailed notes. The Blackwood model is being adapted for government contracting systems worldwide. Dr. Beaumont's approach, systematic transformation rather than punitive termination, proves more effective at creating lasting change than traditional enforcement methods. The personal transformations within the Blackwood family demonstrate the comprehensive nature of federal oversight's human impact. Vanessa Blackwood, now serving as federally supervised Vice President for Compliance Excellence, manages a team of 12 executives recruited from historically black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, and tribal colleges. Her leadership philosophy underwent complete reconstruction during 18 months of federal psychological evaluation and compliance training. "I learned that competence and privilege aren't synonymous," she explains during a Harvard Business School case study interview. "Federal oversight taught me to recognize merit I had previously overlooked because of unconscious bias about who belongs in executive positions." The Harvard case study, titled Federal Intervention and Corporate Transformation, the Blackwood Industries Model, becomes required reading in MBA programs nationwide. Students examine how external federal pressure created internal cultural change that voluntary diversity initiatives had failed to achieve over decades. Marcus Blackwood's digital transformation extends far beyond personal redemption to industry-wide education. His Federal Accountability podcast network now includes 12 shows focusing on government contracting, supplier diversity, and compliance excellence. The network reaches 7 million listeners across North America and generates $3 million annually in revenue donated entirely to minority business development. His most successful show, Privileged and Learning, features conversations between formerly discriminatory executives and the minority professionals they had excluded. The format creates powerful educational content while providing platforms for voices previously silenced by systemic discrimination. "I spent 32 years believing that federal contracts were family inheritance rather than competitive opportunities," Marcus reflects during his most downloaded episode. "Federal intervention taught me that taxpayer money should go to the most qualified providers, not the most socially connected ones. My family's humiliation became the beginning of my education." Grace Blackwood's philanthropic evolution represents generational change in how elite families approach charitable giving. The Emerald Initiative has facilitated $47 million in federal contracts for minority-owned businesses, creating 3,400 jobs and establishing 167 sustainable enterprises across 8 states. Traditional charity maintains existing power structures while appearing to address inequality, she explains during a foundation board meeting broadcast to federal oversight committees. The Emerald Initiative redistributes opportunity rather than just wealth. "We don't just give money to minority businesses, we provide access to federal contracting systems that generate sustainable revenue." The Foundation's approach becomes a model for elite philanthropy nationwide. Rather than hosting galas that celebrate donors, the Emerald Initiative creates procurement fairs that connect minority contractors with federal opportunities. The shift from charity performance to opportunity creation demonstrates authentic commitment to systemic change. The broader impact on Chicago's business community continues expanding 18 months after the initial federal intervention. The Federal Compliance Alliance now includes 1,247 companies, managing $189 billion in government contracts across North America. Member companies report average improvements of 28% in employee satisfaction and 19% in contract performance, compared to non-member contractors. The Chicago Federal Contracting Excellence Center, established in response to the Blackwood transformation, provides compliance training, supplier diversity resources, and federal oversight simulation for companies seeking government contracts. The center processes 847 companies annually and maintains a 94% success rate in helping businesses achieve federal compliance certification. Federal policy development incorporates lessons learned from the Blackwood investigation. The Federal Contractor Accountability Act, introduced in Congress 6 months after the viral incident, expands compliance oversight to include social media monitoring, supplier diversity auditing, and mandatory bias training for all federal contractors. The Blackwood case proves that federal oversight protects taxpayers while promoting excellence, testifies Senator Elizabeth Warren during committee hearings on the legislation. When companies know that discriminatory conduct has real consequences, they invest in inclusive practices that generate better outcomes for everyone. The international implications extend far beyond American federal contracting. The United Nations Global Compact adopts the Blackwood Protocol as a framework for government contractor oversight worldwide. 47 countries implement versions of federal compliance monitoring based on Dr. Beaumont's systematic approach to corporate transformation. Dr. Beaumont's concluding remarks to the UN Assembly encapsulate the global significance of strategic federal intervention. The Blackwood transformation demonstrates that government oversight can catalyze positive change without destroying private enterprise. Federal accountability protects public investment while creating opportunities for previously excluded populations. This isn't just American policy, it's a global model for inclusive capitalism. The final legacy numbers validate comprehensive federal intervention as both effective enforcement and sound economic policy. Companies undergoing Blackwood-style transformation show 23% higher contract renewal rates, 31% better employee retention, and 27% stronger financial performance compared to companies with traditional diversity programs. Dr. Beaumont's Platinum Watch still keeps perfect time, but now it marks moments of possibility rather than countdown to destruction. Every federal contract represents an opportunity to build inclusive excellence rather than perpetuate exclusionary privilege. The Heritage Club Penthouse, where everything began, now hosts monthly federal compliance excellence seminars. The same marble floors that witnessed the Blackwood family's humiliation now facilitate conversations between 200 federal contractors committed to authentic inclusion rather than performative diversity. These are the stories that need telling, stories of brilliant Black women changing federal contracting through strategic oversight rather than social media destruction. Stories of institutional transformation that inspire sustainable change rather than temporary viral satisfaction. What would you have done in Dr. Beaumont's position? Have you witnessed similar moments of unconscious bias in professional settings? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to understand the power of federal accountability and strategic institutional change. Together, we're not just changing individual companies, we're transforming federal contracting culture, one strategic intervention at a time. The continuing journey unfolds with quarterly precision that mirrors Dr. Beaumont's systematic approach to institutional change. Every quarter, Blackwood Industries publishes its Federal Compliance Excellence Report alongside traditional financial statements. Employee satisfaction metrics, supplier diversity achievements, and community impact assessments receive equal prominence with profit margins and revenue growth. The quarterly reports become required reading in federal contracting courses nationwide. Students analyze how authentic accountability creates measurable value, how compliance excellence generates competitive advantage, and how inclusive practices produce superior business outcomes compared to exclusionary traditions. The company that almost died from casual racism now leads its industry in federal compliance innovation. Blackwood Industries pioneers new supplier diversity programs, develops unconscious bias training curricula, and creates mentorship networks that connect established contractors with emerging minority-owned businesses. Dr. Beaumont's Platinum Watch continues marking moments of institutional possibility rather than corporate destruction. Her approach to federal oversight, strategic transformation rather than punitive termination, influences government contracting policy across multiple federal agencies. The Department of Defense adopts Blackwood-style compliance transformation as the preferred alternative to contract cancellation. The General Services Administration incorporates systematic inclusion training into all major procurement processes. The Department of Homeland Security requires Blackwood Protocol implementation for all contractors managing sensitive federal projects. The transformation model scales beyond individual companies to industry-wide cultural change. The Federal Contractors Excellence Network, inspired by the Blackwood case, now includes 2,147 companies across North America, managing $340 billion in government contracts annually. Member companies report consistent improvements: 31% higher employee satisfaction, 27% better contract performance, 23% stronger supplier diversity metrics, and 19% increased revenue growth compared to non-member contractors. The business case for federal compliance excellence becomes undeniable when measured by actual performance outcomes. Preston Blackwood, now 67 and serving as Chairman Emeritus under permanent federal oversight, reflects on the transformation during his final quarterly compliance interview. "I spent 40 years believing that federal contracts were inherited privileges rather than earned opportunities. Federal intervention taught me that taxpayer trust requires constant validation, not automatic renewal." His quarterly reflections, mandated by federal oversight requirements, become teaching materials in government ethics courses. Students examine how inherited privilege can corrupt professional judgment and how external accountability can restore institutional integrity. "The hardest lesson," Preston continues, "was learning that my family's social connections had replaced merit-based decision-making without my conscious awareness. Federal oversight forced us to recognize competence we had overlooked and address biases we didn't know we possessed. The personal accountability extends beyond corporate compliance to genuine character development." Preston's transformation from privileged patriarch to federally supervised executive demonstrates that meaningful change requires both external pressure and internal commitment to growth. The Blackwood family's community service requirements, completed over 18 months of federal supervision, created unexpected personal relationships that challenged their fundamental assumptions about social hierarchy and professional competence. Volunteering with minority-owned businesses introduced them to entrepreneurs whose achievements far exceeded their own, but who had been systematically excluded from federal contracting opportunities. I met business owners with Harvard MBAs managing companies from strip mall offices because federal contracts went to less qualified providers with better social connections, Grace reflects during her final compliance evaluation. Our privilege had created a system that wasted taxpayer money while excluding excellence. The community service requirement becomes a permanent feature of federal contractor compliance programs. Companies found guilty of discriminatory practices must complete documented volunteer service, with organizations representing the populations they had excluded. The requirement creates personal relationships that challenge unconscious biases more effectively than classroom training alone. Dr. Patricia Washington's leadership of Blackwood Industries demonstrates how federal intervention can elevate exceptional talent previously overlooked by discriminatory hiring practices. Under her management, the company achieves record performance while maintaining 100% federal compliance for 18 consecutive months. Her success validates Dr. Beaumont's belief that inclusive practices generate better business outcomes than exclusionary traditions. Washington's leadership team, recruited entirely through merit-based selection without regard to social connections, consistently outperforms the previous family-dominated management structure. Merit-based leadership isn't just morally correct, it's economically superior, Washington explains during her Harvard Business School guest lecture. When hiring decisions focus on competence rather than connections, companies access talent pools they previously ignored. Federal oversight didn't just make us more inclusive, it made us more competitive. The Harvard lecture, attended by 400 MBA students and broadcast to federal contractor training programs nationwide, becomes one of the most watched business education presentations in university history. Washington's combination of academic expertise, practical experience, and personal dignity creates a powerful example of leadership excellence that transcends racial boundaries. The federal compliance monitoring that initially felt punitive evolves into competitive advantage. Companies undergoing Blackwood-style transformation consistently win federal contracts at higher rates than traditionally managed competitors. Federal agencies prefer working with contractors who demonstrate measurable commitment to inclusive excellence. Federal compliance isn't a burden to manage, it's an opportunity to excel, Washington notes during her quarterly compliance presentation. Companies that embrace authentic inclusion attract better talent, generate superior performance, and win more contracts than organizations that treat diversity as a checkbox requirement. The competitive advantage extends beyond federal contracting to private sector opportunities. Major corporations increasingly prefer suppliers who demonstrate federal compliance excellence. The Blackwood certification becomes a valuable credential that opens doors across multiple industries. The international recognition continues expanding as Dr. Beaumont's systematic approach influences government contracting policies worldwide. The European Union adopts modified versions of federal compliance monitoring. Canada implements Blackwood Protocol training for all government suppliers. Australia develops inclusive contracting requirements based on American federal oversight models. The Blackwood transformation demonstrates that government oversight can promote excellence while protecting public investment, Dr. Beaumont explains during her final United Nations presentation. Federal accountability creates opportunities for previously excluded populations while generating better outcomes for taxpayers. This isn't just American innovation, it's a global model for inclusive capitalism. The UN Global Compact formally adopts the Blackwood Protocol as an international framework for government contractor oversight. 63 countries commit to implementing systematic inclusion monitoring for companies receiving public contracts. The viral moment that began with casual racism in a Chicago penthouse becomes policy framework affecting $2.3 trillion in annual government contracting worldwide. Real-life stories of federal accountability and corporate transformation continue inspiring change across industries and continents. The Blackwood case proves that strategic intervention creates more lasting impact than punitive destruction, that systematic change produces better outcomes than viral humiliation, and that institutional accountability generates sustainable progress rather than temporary satisfaction. Dr. Beaumont's legacy extends far beyond one family's transformation to fundamental changes in how government contracting promotes inclusive excellence. Her systematic approach, patient, strategic, comprehensive, demonstrates that lasting change requires institutional power applied with surgical precision rather than emotional reaction. The granite floors of the Heritage Club still gleam with traditional wealth, but now they reflect new possibilities for inclusive excellence. The crystal chandeliers that witnessed the Blackwood family's humiliation now illuminate monthly federal compliance celebrations where 200 contractors share best practices for authentic inclusion. Every federal contract represents an opportunity to build inclusive excellence rather than perpetuate exclusionary privilege. Every compliance report becomes a chance to demonstrate that merit-based selection produces superior outcomes. Every quarterly assessment creates accountability that protects taxpayer investment while promoting authentic opportunity. These are the real stories that matter, Black stories of strategic brilliance applied through federal authority, institutional stories of systematic transformation Life stories that demonstrate how powerful narratives of change emerge from moments when privilege confronts accountability and discovers the possibility of authentic excellence. The transformation continues, measured quarterly, monitored federally, and celebrated internationally, as proof that strategic institutional intervention can create sustainable change that benefits everyone. Taxpayers, employees, contractors, and communities previously excluded from federal opportunity. Dr. Jade Beaumont's Platinum Watch keeps perfect time, marking moments when federal authority creates inclusive possibility rather than perpetuating exclusive privilege. Time moves forward, and with it the promise that government contracting can serve all Americans rather than just the traditionally connected few. Thank you to everyone who typed accountability, and to all who shared their locations from around the world. Your global support means everything. If these stories inspire you, please subscribe to join our community and help us share more incredible tales of courage and justice. Until next time, keep believing in the power of truth.